Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. With thunder of applause, please welcome Dr. Rajiv Kumar, country's foremost economist. Dr. Rajiv Kumar was former Deputy Chief of Niti Aayog. For 5 years, he has served the country there. And before that, he has served organizations like ICRIA, FICCI. He worked with World Bank, and he's considered as country's one of the best economists. Let's join hands to welcome Rajiv Kumar. Welcome, sir. Have a seat. So, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, other than the introduction which I have given, he has worked extensively with Japan. And now I'm told that in December, mid-December, government of Japan is honoring him with the one of the topmost citizens award. So let's give him a round of applause and for many of his works. Thank you, sir.
No,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Anilesh. Yeah, it's called the rise of the award of the Rising Sun, Silver and Gold Standard, and the Emperor confers it, and the Japanese ambassador is going to give it to me, confer it to me on the 12th of December. So thank you very much.
It's honor for us Indians, sir. Thank you.
Well, I suppose it reflects the fact that my first visit to Japan was in 1983. So it's like a 40-year journey of building relations with Japan, and I suppose I think that this is they recognize this, as they always do, about a person's steady contribution to the Indo-Japanese relations. Yeah.
Sir, in this day-long conversation, we have dwelled upon many topics which dealt with the past, present, and the future of the friendship between the two great nations. Japan, as we all understand, has a very robust system of developing technologies, developing many of the enablers, hardwares for making those digital products function. So we had talked about the money which is coming from the Japanese, but sir, there is also a view that the potential is not being utilized between the Japan friendship. We had civilizational connect with Japan. We have trust, we have friendship, but still on the business front, on the commerce front, the potential is still at a very nascent stage. How do you read it, and where do you think that roadblock came, and how can we overcome that?
Yeah, so you're very right in the sense that Japan has played a critical role in the infrastructure development of the country, and a lot. And you can see examples after examples. The entire metro network has been developed. Now the high-speed train being developed, the ports, etc. Some of the power generation, and so all of that has been done. But this has been largely done on the basis of official credit. Official credit at very easy rates, is at very easy terms to India, and this is the work of JBIC and so on, and that's been as I said, absolutely critical. My own personal feeling is that the representation of Japan Incorporated, which has grown a lot over the last years, is still below par. I think they can come up much better, much bigger than and much larger than what they've done now. And I especially refer to the fact that the businesses of Japan's the Osaka region, the Kansai region, etc. Which are smaller, medium-sized businesses, etc. They are still not found in India, and the supply chain has still not shifted, as it were, to the India now. So the block, I think, is and I think let me go back to take a step. In my conversation with Prime Minister Fukuda, we had agreed the fact that the language presents a major block in our relationship, and there was a suggestion at one point of time to take Indian high school children and start offering Japanese language at that level, not at the university level, but at the high school level. Because Japanese culture is so different, civilization is so deeply entrenched and so on, that you've got to get au fait with it. You get to know it before you can start dealing with it. What I'm saying is that on our side, the bottleneck is the inability to communicate in the Japanese language and understand the Japanese culture to the extent that we have to if we want to work there. On their side, they get overwhelmed by India's diversity. They just don't know how to handle it because they would rather work in one state or two states, but I mean that's not possible. So they just the very big differences in governance, in handling handling the ground realities, in handling the labor force, the skills, etc. I think that's what the Japanese find in my perception, in my understanding, quite difficult. And I think it's up to us really to to solve that. And we can do that if and the Prime Minister, if you remember, had proposed and had ordered the establishment of a special cell for the Japanese investment in the Ministry of External Affairs and also in the DPIIT, but that unfortunately hasn't worked as well as it could be. But that's the sort of thing that we need to do, and some of it has been done by Invest India, but we need to do much more.
So when we look at Japan, we have so much of strategic commonality. We are there with them for defense-related manufacturing. We want them to be part of it, even for nuclear thing. Despite Fukushima and other unfortunate instances where Japan had to face adversities, they trusted us, and they backed our nuclear program as well. Then in Quad and the logistic network which we want to bring, they are partnering with us. But despite that, we are not being able to attract many of the big Japanese companies, and we can't blame them for this because the way Shibatsu mindset works, probably there is more needs to be done at our end rather than their end. Or what is your reading that?
I said that. I said that this is the ball is in both courts. We have to do our homework. And we have to, and we started this process in Niti Aayog, which is to connect with individual Japanese companies. And when Abe-san, Prime Minister Abe, announced, the fact that the Japan government was going to give about $2 billion for companies which are going to relocate from China, that was the time that we moved and said, this is, let's talk to the Japanese companies as to how they can expand their capacities in India, when they are moving out of China. And what we need to do is to give that extra care, to give that extra attention to Japanese investors, these private Japanese investors, to come here and look after each individual need. Now, the central government possibly can't do it, but therefore what you need to do is to have a kind of a coalition or a mission between the center and the state governments who can all come together, because see, Japan offers a massive opportunity for us. And politically we are on the same page. Politically we are deeply aligned. As you said, we are members of the Quad, and so on. But economically, we need to, and I remember the time when they gave us a whole list, and that list probably still continues, about 18 conditions that they would wanted, fulfilled. And I think some agency on our side has to work closely with JICA and JETRO, because they are the ones who are actually pushing that engine forward. And I think form that triumvirate, which can then work in different states to resolve the local conditions and make Japanese investment possible. So the ease of doing business, is not a catch-all phrase. It has to be catered and it has to be directed towards each individual company, if you like. Because now, I give you one example. I mean, the fact is that, and I had a discussion with Meti, we can combine Japan and India have a huge complementarity in artificial intelligence, because we have the data, they have the excellence, technology, etc. But we need to work at that, and only it's by working at that can we get that done. And I think the best example, and I'll end here, because I see Mr. Bhargav walking in, the best example of having given attention to a company is the success of Suzuki and Maruti in India.
And sir, when we see Mr. Bhargava, we can also talk about the automobile sector. Japan offers a really good potential, and now when we are moving towards hybrids and EVs, somewhere around we are seeing that Indian EV story is going a bit off track. So how do you read the current scenario, and what sort of collaborations do you see happening with the Japanese on this front? Because we already see that Japanese have, have experience of the Indian market. Their understanding of Indian market has matured. So do you think that there is more collaboration which can happen on the EV side?
I mean, surely there can be more collaboration, but let me divide this into two parts. One, that India's EV story will be driven by our two-wheelers and three-wheelers, because they account for 60% of our vehicles on the road, 67% of total transport emissions in the transport sector. And that's not something which Japan has been keen on, because that's not, two-wheelers are not, they have had the world's best two-wheeler companies, but that transition to two-wheeler EVs is not the Japanese forte. So if there we will have to do on our own, design and R&D and manufacturing. And I must say some of the Indian two-wheeler companies are doing amazing work in terms of the design, also in terms of battery chemistry and so on. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is four-wheelers. And there again you have to divide that into passengers, cars, and into transport vehicles. Now the transport vehicles is where Japan has done a lot of work with fuel cell and with hydrogen and hydrogen-driven vehicles. Now that's the frontier area where Indian companies and Indian, all of us should look towards collaboration and technology transfer from Japan. Because with the advent of green hydrogen, which is a must, as it were, and people talk about diesel, that's a different matter. I think that's the area where we can actually become, green transport with Japanese help. If we can make our road transport, more and more driven by hydrogen and not just not batteries. So that will also help us to overcome our constraint on the lithium, which is what we import, etc., and the lithium battery. And I think that recognition is now there in the government, and which is why you've got a green hydrogen mission, and that leap we have to make. And I think Japan has already demonstrated, the fact that hydrogen-driven vehicles are technologically and commercially viable. And I think Toyota has taken the lead in that, and I'm sure that's the three part. Now on four-wheeler passenger cars, we have had a sort of a different approach. The Japanese companies, for very good reasons, I'm sure, followed the hybrid technology. Our companies have gone in for pure EV technology like Tata's or Mahindra's, etc. So I'm not sure of that, but I guess there will be some convergence going forward, between on the passenger car, vehicles, the car segment as well going forward.
So the way India, provides the demographic dividend and that gives, the access to data. And in last 10 years, India has developed this database, even Stack is almost ready now. So that provides Japanese companies to come in and use that database and use their technologies to do a better understanding through artificial intelligence and IoTs and other things. How do you see that collaboration? So during Niti Aayog, I'm told that there were certain conversations around this. So where are we heading, sir?
Those conversations that actually already have been overtaken by the huge development of the digital public infrastructure in India. A lot has happened here, with the people, because with our, folks developing their own protocols. Now I know that, there's work going on developing our own operating systems, etc. So basically what I'm saying is that even on technological software side, we have upped our game. And Japanese have been there in a very sort of, very far up there. So my proposal to them, and that was accepted by Methi, the Director General had, come and so on, and the Minister, was that we can combine our forces. There was Center for Excellence on Artificial Intelligence, I think based near Osaka or in Osaka. Now if they could combine that with our data, and given that our data protection law is now in place, we have localized the data, we can now handle that much better. I think the two together would be the counter to China, because the Chinese have this huge advantage of very large numbers and very high technological development as well. And I think the two of Japan and India would come together to meet that challenge, and also to ensure that AI is not used for the wrong purposes, and therefore work together to also set a standard, on AI. The recent conference in England, I forget the name of the place, near London, and then it's going to be followed by one in Seoul. I think that's where Japan and India need to work together to try and get the regulatory standards for AI, so that the the AI does not develop in a manner which is malevolent, and which is fair and only for security reasons, etc., but works towards generating higher quality employment and improving the people's welfare. I think that's where we can combine.
So if I could put this into manufacturing side, so India can play the way China played for the Taiwanese companies for manufacturing side. So they have the access to the cheaper capital as well as good amount of technology, and we can provide them the workforce plus a demography and database where they can use that database to test their technologies into AI and maybe develop better protocols for the better world, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's very, training the algorithms requires that kind of numbers and that kind of data, base, which only India has. And now India has also the software and the, other skills to be able to play an active role in doing so. So development of algorithms in Japan, for the right purposes, and their testing in India, and then their commercialization and scaling is, I think, a model that can be seen very carefully. But again, to repeat myself in the earlier stage, this needs careful handling and attention. It won't happen by itself. You will need a dedicated task force for something like that to happen. Maybe the iSpirit group, which works out of Bangalore, with Sharad Sharma, Nandan Nilikeni and others. Maybe that's the sort of group that can come together with the Japanese and then help to develop this. This will also help, this can also help to, if you like, push back or beat the monopoly of the technology companies, the US technology companies, which at the moment are, actually extract a huge rent from our own, firms and our other ways. And I think that's a field waiting to happen, waiting to be exploited with a collaboration, Indo-Japanese collaboration going forward. And this, by the way, is also true of many other frontier technologies where we can combine and
so maybe green hydrogen and
yep.
renewables you are talking about.
Storage technology, battery chemistry, yeah.
And many of the renewables thing, they are still dependent on China and for solar and wind. So many of the Chinese companies are supplying to Japan. Maybe they can use the Indian shores to make many of these things and put their renewable energy story, back on track.
Yeah, and that renewable energy stories, and the discussion that we just had, on the new areas, etc., may also require us to relook at the, at our SEPA, because I think that's very trade oriented, and it's not oriented towards tech investments and technological exchange. I think if we do that and if we can get, a sort of a new, expand it and include the new areas, and then also talk about bilateral investment guarantees in there and etc.
There is a conversation that we need to revise our free trade agreements, and Japan is one of them. Yeah. But there is this thing that these agreements are sacrosanct. On one hand, we are already pushing ASEAN countries to reopen the negotiations on FTAs, and with Japan and Korea also that we want to do it. Do you think that now time has come that there has to be a sunset into the agreements, and where we need to relook at many of these?
Nilesh, the fear always is that when you talk about reviewing of the FTAs or the CEPAs, the intention is to make them, to dilute them, to increase the protectionist nature of those areas and to close areas which are perhaps open to them. And I think if we make that clear, that that's not the intention, and the intention is to have more intense and wider exchange, wider interaction and engagement with each other, I think every side will be more at peace with it. Now there is nothing sacrosanct as far as two sovereign entities are concerned. They can do what they like with each other's agreements. So, but I think the starting point has to be that we are doing this with the intention that we will intensify and broaden our engagement rather than further narrow it and talk about more is to only self-interest and not the win-win situation that can come. That can happen.
Especially when the discussions at WTO is not heading anywhere. especially on the digital and the electronic transmission side. So we still don't have the bilaterals as well. So there is a still a gray area how we can put trust into each other, how we can bring build the infrastructure where we can share the information, share the knowledge base with each other. Do you think that these type of negotiation, maybe outside SEPA, there is some scope where we can do some bilateral agreement with Japan and carry forward with that?
I think these have to start off with what we used to call the track 1.5 dialogues. And those have to happen, sort of 1.5 means that it's quasi-official, but also taking forward, with the help of other stakeholders, industry and civil society and think tanks, etc. And that conversation, I think, is still not, is not deep enough, is not even intense enough between India and Japan. I think if we start that process, then there is a chance that you can get into the bilateral negotiations outside any of the multilateral fora, because multilateral fora, as you mentioned yourself, are in a very poor state, and they don't offer the platform for something like that. But but it is time, I think, that Japan also recognizes even more the rising importance of India. And I say this in the context of the fact that I have been saying this and many times, that in Japan, India is still covered by, I think, by the JICC, the Japan Industry Cooperation, and not within the Kedan-Ren, which covers most of the major important countries. So I think it's time that promotion takes place and our conversations take place within the Kedan-Ren, and we have our powerful and coherent enough mission structure here, which can promise to the Japanese companies, if you like, spatial treatment, for every project that they want to get into. So that, I think, once that starts off, it will have a huge multiplier effect on their own supply chain, which can then shift here.
Sir, our time is getting over, so maybe if, as a concluding thing, if we can ask you that, which all areas, if you want to make a list, could be the, low-hanging fruits into the Indo-Japanese friendship, where we can, pluck them and deepen our relationship?
Well, it sounds maybe the lowest hanging fruit for the moment, given the success of our high-speed train construction now between Ahmedabad, is to try and repeat that, but at a lower cost, across the country. So that will change the economic geography of our country, if we can do that because that's now proven. That's something that we can handle. So that will be one. The other, of course, will be the automobile sector, because that's proved a huge success. And I think we can try and collaboration in green hydrogen. And finally, I think what we need in a very big way is high-tech capital goods industry, which is very well established in Japan, and which is what we are just starting off. And this will help our defense localization and defense industrialization. And I think those are the three areas where I would think we need to work together with Japan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving us the India perspective into the Indo-Japan friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a round of applause. Mr. Rajiv Kumar. Thank you, sir.